Ei pessoal, tudo certo? Lembrando, este vídeo ele é originalmente produzido por Jordan Peters e foi legendado com todo cuidado para que vocês aproveitem ao máximo. Lembre-se, o material é do canal mencionado e nossa missão é democratizar o acesso a esse conhecimento. Então aproveitem.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to episode 4 of the education series. Now, the last video we covered was potentially the best training split, which is the full body training split, the one that I urged the majority of you to consider trying. Now, once you've exhausted that split, and I'm going to explain to you where that would come about, where do you then move to? And the answer to that, I believe, is the upper-lower training split. And the reason for that is because we can still keep the frequency extremely high when we use upper-lower rest, upper-lower rest. So the amount of times that we're exposing our body to that level of stimulus across a 2-week period and then over a year is still incredibly high versus a split training part. But it allows us more focus on what we're trying to do in each individual session. Because I said in the previous video that you're going to reach a point in that kind of journey with that training split where you're going to look at your logbook and you're going to be like, wow, that's an incredibly hard session, because for me to progress my lifts on everything, it's going to be super demanding, especially the back end of the session. Like, so let's take for example that you're doing a full body training and you've progressed all of your upper body lifts, but mentally and physically that's taken a lot out of you. And then you come to your legs and you're like, I'm spent, I'm just spent, I've got nothing. Despite that, you push hard and you actually just find an inability to progress your lifts on the back end of the session. That is the moment where you then need to move to upper-lower training. Now, for some of you, the reason why will be more because of your inability to be accurate with the factors that influence your recovery, like we previously talked about. So don't just immediately rush to upper-lower training. Focus on trying to stick with the full body training split and improving every area that will contribute to success of your overall ability to build muscle. So those sleep, hydration, etc., etc. Once you know you've come to the end of that training split, which I would say can be around for at least a year. If you're already fairly developed, you might stall out after 6 months. If you are way too developed to have necessarily done it, you'll know after 3 months. But again, the large majority will be able to use this split for a year. And in that period, you will have made a huge amount of progress, but you'll reach a point where the back end of the session will then be impossible to keep going with. Great, that's job done. When I hear that, I literally want to hug someone, because in my head I'm like, you've executed that split for a year, you've exposed yourself to all that level of stimulus, you've progressed your lifts astronomically, you've probably gained 10 to 15 pounds of lean tissue in that year. That's a realistic number, which is probably more than you've put on in the whole time that you've been faffing around with bodybuilding. And you've trained so hard that now you cannot progress your lifts at the back end of the session. You literally deserve an applause, in my opinion, when that happens. Because you could not have done anything better. You have done everything to a T. So that's not actually a failure at that point where you then can't progress your lifts there. That's a huge, huge success, a huge win. And to me, that's then like the doors opening to upper lower. You progress from level 1 to then whatever we want to call the next level. So the doors open, you walk through them. Whereas I know a lot of you have spent too long a time with just misdirection. And again, I understand why that occurs, because mentally the full body training is hard, and there'll be some days where you're tired and you're like, do you know what, I just want an arm day. Okay, that's cool. Like, train to what is fun. Like, that's a big component of this too, is having fun. But like I said in the other ones, I also know a lot of you, fun is progress. To me, there is nothing more fun than progress. Like, in any aspect of life. To me, progress is absolutely everything. And I need to make progress in everything that I do. And I reflect on it constantly. To the point where it's basically an obsession. And whether that's healthy or not, I don't care. It's what I find fun. So for those of you that find progress fun, that full body training is going to be awesome. So you can run with that. Now, once those doors have opened to upper lower, how does that look? Like I said, upper lower rest, upper lower rest, upper lower rest. We're now going to take those first parts of the upper body session, and we're just going to add more volume to them. And this is where the idea of the load and the back off set was kind of born, which I both was happy about and regretted at the same time, because it took some of the training that we do a little out of context in the idea that we only do load and back off, which is wrong, but we'll talk about that in a second. So let's say we do our upper body session, and we do our chest press first, our shoulder press second, our tricep press first, third, and then we do our lateral, and then we move on to our back work, and then we come back to our arm work. Now all we're going to do for those pieces is we're going to add 2 sets in total. So we're going to add a set, and we're going to then come to a total of 2 sets. How do those rep ranges look? The first one will still be the heavy rep range, like you were previously doing, your 6 to 10. And then the second rep range could then be, it doesn't necessarily have to be the 15 to 25, but we can say it will be a 12 to 20, around that. I believe that's a good number. In previous videos I may have said then it could just be a 10 to 15, and it can be, but my point being is it's just a decrease in the weight where we then get more reps. Now, once you've reached the upper end of the rep range, that's where then I want you to jump forward considerably more in the loading to reset yourself to the lower portion of the rep range. So let's look at an example of how that would look for one exercise. So let's say we do something that falls on the lower end of rep range for a chest move, and it'll be a 6 rep incline Smith press. So for that would be for me maybe like 4.5 plates. Now, over the period of progression, I might go 4.5 plates and add like a biscuit, like a 0.5 or a 125, and then build that up to 7 reps. And then over time I might add a little bit more, but then get to 8 reps. And that will eventually max out where I do like 4.5 plates, and then I've managed to build like 3.75 kilos of weight progress, but I've also managed to get that up to 10 reps. Absolutely amazing, job done. That may have taken me 3 months to do that. Quite a long time, but that'd probably be 3 months to do that, probably about right, maybe 4 months. Now, when I jump that weight up to then knock myself back to the 6 reps, I'm gonna maybe jump a whole 5 kilos at once. And then that'll put me right back to 6 reps, and then I'm gonna start that process again. But after I've done that first set, that was like 4.5 plates plus the extras, and I got like 6 at the start point. Now for my second set, all I'm gonna do is lower it to, initially you're not gonna know where to lower it. Initially, you're just gonna have to just make an estimation. But I would probably move mine down to, if I was doing 4.5, I'd probably move mine down to like 3.5. Or maybe even 3. And then I would get 16, 17 reps. And I'd fall in the area where I'm shooting to fall. And then, again, I logbook that until it's upper end, which can be 20 reps. And you can have wider rep range parameters or narrower rep range parameters in terms of your low end reps based on what feels good for you. But I wouldn't go too heavy just out of safety. So I wouldn't advise doing doubles and triples unless you're really, really, really used to doing them, in the sense that you used to be a power lifter and then you've wanted to move into more of a bodybuilding specific split, and you're used to exposing yourself to super heavy loads. Okay, and you enjoy doing them. Okay, great. Doubles and trebles, if you want to put some of those in, great. Don't do loads of them, because you are eventually, as you know, going to run into issues where you pick up unnecessary knocks, where it's inevitability if you're doing doubles and trebles all the time that you're going to pick up injuries. And nothing slows progress more than being injured. if you cannot lift, you cannot make progress. And kind of one of the notions that we already focus on at this point is that progress is everything. So your rep range selection has to reflect your ability to be able to execute your programming over a long period of time. So then let's work in some rep ranges that are suitable. Like, I loved heavy lifting. I loved doubles and trebles. So I used to do probably more of them than I should have done. And I certainly picked up injuries as a result. Especially in the last year where I was training, I tore a few things just because I love training in that area. But that's me moving off of necessarily what is best for me to more do what I love doing. And that's no problem with doing that. We fall on the same idea of what training split do you pick, because if you love split body part, do split body part. I'm never ever going to tell someone to not do something that they love doing. Even if it's potentially stupid and risky, you just have to understand the shortcomings that can come about through those decisions. And as long as you do, that's fine. So that's where we're at with the rep range parameters. Now, we don't need to rotate between some aspects of heavy and low because we have split rep ranges for each exercise. The only thing that we need to focus on now is making sure that we still have a suitable number of variations for each training session. And for upper lower training, I would advise having 3 individual training sessions. So 3 uppers and 3 lowers, and these are what I want you to work your way through until you revisit your previous training session. So I want you to go upper 1, lower 1, rest, upper 2, lower 2, rest, upper 3, lower 3, rest. And then I'm going to come back to upper 1 and I'm going to look at my logbook and I'm going to progress those lifts. Progression is everything. Progression with standardized form is everything. I have to caveat that standardized form part all the time because I know for a fact that I'm going to get tagged in people's progress with poor form. And just remember, guys, we have to create the internal stimulus. So, just like in the previous video where I talked about that win from the session or not, as soon as your form loses its standardization, that's not a win. And we've all been there because we get excited at the notion of taking that progress mid-set and we'll alter our form. It's normal, it's human nature, but cool yourself on that, because if we're going to make progress, if we want to make progress, we have to be strict with ourselves. So what we've covered there, we've covered the volume for the training sessions, we've covered the frequency at which we're doing them, we've covered the amount of variations of each training split, we've covered when to progress from full body to upper lower. I think we've covered everything. This one is a fairly quick one, so we don't have to go into too much. But I hugely advise you watching the full body video first, because again, a lot of these videos are heavily interlinked, because I'm doing it as an education series. So if you really want to learn my methods as a whole, I advise watching video 1 because it's going to give you an introduction into the way that I think in general. And then video 2 will kind of explain how these training sessions are interlinked and how the volume adjusts based on the frequency. And then as we get into these, we then delve into the specifics of how each training split looks. So again, any questions, please ask. I'm here for all of the comments. We've had some crazy ones. I'm all for it. Hit me with your craziest comments, guys. They definitely brighten up my day a little bit. So I hope this is helpful. Subscribe, notifications, comment, all of it. I appreciate you a lot. I'll see you soon.